Welcome everyone to our presentation, What About Safe and Decent Housing That is Affordable? My name is Ned Murray. I'm the Associate Director of the George M. Perez Metropolitan Center at Florida International University, and I'm joined today with my colleague, Nika Ziranova. The Metropolitan Center has been around for nearly 24 years. Most of our research involves working with local governments, nonprofits, community foundations in the areas of affordable housing, economic development, and land use planning. The focus of our research was on housing conditions in Miami-Dade County, and particularly the housing condition of older structures that were built prior to the state building codes that address hurricanes and other storm events. The focus also was on lower income and coastal communities throughout Miami-Dade County. Several pre-COVID affordable housing needs assessments for Miami-Dade and South Florida that were prepared by the FIU Metropolitan Center documented excessive housing distress, especially for low and very low income renters. Lower income renters comprise the vast majority of service workers in the industry sectors most impacted by the pandemic, including accommodation and food services, retail, and healthcare. There is now a growing realization it will remain a COVID economy well into the future, and a high percentage of these jobs may have disappeared for good. Significantly, the concentrations of older, unsafe housing structures in Miami-Dade County are found in these less affluent communities that are already experiencing the health and economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. The highest concentration of unsafe housing were found in some of the poorer communities like Model Cities, Homestead, Little Haiti, and Liberty City. Hurricane Andrew in 1992 highlighted the vulnerability of Florida's building standards at that time. The Category 5 hurricane damaged or destroyed more than 125,000 homes and left an estimated 250,000 people homeless in South Miami-Dade County. Before Hurricane Andrew slammed into South Miami-Dade, resulting in the costliest natural disaster for insured losses in global history at that time, Miami-Dade and Broward counties had outdated building codes that lacked enforcement.
To better analyze the most vulnerable communities, we provide the application of the Community Distress Index, which determines population at risk at the block group level and neighborhood levels. The COVID Community Distress Index is composed of 4 sub-indices: socioeconomic status, household composition and disability status, race and language, and housing interpretation, which are then composed of 20 separate indicators. Those indicators include things like population below poverty level, unemployment rate, median household income, education level, minority population, cost burden owner households, cost burden renter households, mobile homes, crowding, etc. The CDI indicators were tabulated for each of the county block group and then ranked. Each of the block group was indexed in comparison to the overall county indicators. CDI determined Miami-Dade County's most vulnerable populations also live in housing structures most vulnerable to major hurricanes. The CDI, in supporting ArcGIS Pro geocoding and visualization capabilities, were able to establish and visualize the concentrations of unsafe housing structures and pair them with COVID-related socioeconomic vulnerabilities. Significantly, the concentrations of older, unsafe housing structures in Miami-Dade County were found in less affluent communities that already experienced COVID-related health and economic impacts. The next step was to examine county's property appraiser data to determine the age of the structure and median values by location. The analysis focused on all housing units built prior to 1990. A pre-1990 timeframe was used as a South Florida building code in which Miami-Dade County and Broward County adopt high-velocity hurricane zone building code standards. We focus on housing structures with building values that are less than 80% of the median value by submarket. Based on this assessment, the research found an estimated 258,124 residential structures built prior to Florida building code are highly vulnerable to the potential damages of a major hurricane. These structures contain an estimated 815,721 residents. Through ArcGIS, we were able to map out all of the most vulnerable housing structures by housing type. The highest concentrations of unsafe housing were found in Model City, Homestead, Little Haiti, and Liberty City. Utilizing ArcGIS Pro, the data display unleashes a location-driven approach, which provides a foundation for strategic targeting of distressed geographical areas and policy implications, designed to create a more resilient housing supply and address the housing needs of vulnerable populations.
Given the scope and scale of Miami-Dade County's unsafe housing challenge, there was an urgent need to create forward-looking prevention and mitigation policies and strategies to address the issue head-on. So where did we begin? Well, the scope and scale of Miami-Dade County's unsafe housing issue will require a proportional policy response. To begin, the county and the municipalities will need to determine the location of unsafe structures and identify potential sources for long-term funding assistance. So where can Geodesign help? Well, number one, it can assist local governments in conducting rapid analysis and justifying investments in housing rehab. It can help plan for temporary housing needs. It can develop vulnerability and capacity assessments of the housing supply. It can provide plans for assisting residents with post-disaster repairs and rebuilding. It can categorize residential structures. It can replenish more resilient and sustainable affordable housing supply by looking at those locations where that is most feasible. It can determine whether the existing housing supply is adequate through geocoding. And it can establish dedicating housing assistance fund by prioritizing those locations where the impacts of the major hurricanes were the greatest. The age and unsafe conditions of a vast number of housing units in older coastal communities across the U.S. has really insidiously compounded affordable housing distress. Hurricanes, tropical storms, and other climate-related threats have had devastating impacts on communities. All indications are that the effects of natural and man-made disasters will worsen in the coming years as hurricanes intensify and sea levels continue to rise. Nico and I want to thank you for joining us today. For more questions, comments, and any other information and data, please contact us. We'd be glad to share this information with you. Thank you again, and look forward to hearing from you and also getting feedback on our presentation. Thank you very much.